With so many diets out there, you may be wondering which diet works best for cardiometabolic health. And that's exactly the topic of our lecture. My name is Kahleova. I'm Director of Clinical Research at the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Let me walk you through which diet works best for cardiometabolic health. The outline of the lecture is we'll be looking at the benefits of fiber for cardiometabolic health, then review different plant-based eating patterns, and also the pathophysiologic mechanisms behind. Okay, more than 45% of cardiometabolic deaths in the United States could be prevented if people ate less processed meats, less sodium, less red meats, and drank less sugar-sweetened beverages, and if they ate more whole grains, fruits and vegetables, and nuts and seeds. The Adventist Health Study 2 has demonstrated a linear relationship between the animal product consumption and the risk of developing obesity and also type 2 diabetes. Vegans are the leanest people compared to other groups, and they also have the lowest chance of getting diabetes. Why is it? First of all, it comes down to energy density. We know that plant foods tend to have low energy density, so they can fill us up without, and we can get satiated without the extra energy, in contrast to meat, other animal products, and highly processed oils. It comes down to fiber. Fiber is the magic component of the plant-based nutrition that works in different components of our gastrointestinal system and promotes satiety, is important for energy balance and weight regulation. It also regulates the gut microbiome composition, both its richness and diversity, and also its composition. A meta-analysis from 185 studies with 135 million person years showed that fiber consumption reduces all-cause mortality by 15%. That means fiber intake can reduce the risk of dying from any cause by 15%. And we can see that the most benefits can be seen somewhere around 15 to 20 grams per day, but the line keeps declining even though more gradually. And so you can get benefits even when you're eating 35 grams per day, but the steepest benefits are obtained when you, if you're not consuming any fiber, if you actually start eating some fiber, somewhere between 15 and 20 grams per day. The benefits of fiber are also in preventing the development of type 2 diabetes. Fiber consumption can decrease the risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 16%, and can also improve all the cardiometabolic outcomes, such as body weight, plasma lipids, systolic blood pressure, and fasting plasma glucose. Now, fiber is even more important in people with diabetes. It can decrease the all-cause mortality by 45%, and we can see the most benefits between 20 and 26 grams of fiber per day, but we can see that the line is still declining much more rapidly than in general population. So people with diabetes, the more fiber they eat, the more benefits they get. And also fiber intake reduces cardiovascular mortality by 39%. So compared to 15% in general population, 45% in diabetes, and a reduction in cardiovascular mortality by 39% is much more remarkable in people with diabetes. So people with diabetes need to be much more careful about their fiber intake. Fiber also improves the cardiometabolic outcomes in type 2 diabetes, such as A1C, fasting plasma glucose, blood lipids, body weight, waist circumference, C-reactive protein as a marker of inflammation, and also insulin resistance. Now, is there any fiber in animal products? Of course not. There's no fiber whatsoever. That means we are completely dependent on plant foods for our fiber intake. Now, how many plant-based eating patterns emphasize the consumption of fiber? First of all, it's the Mediterranean diet, which is very popular. The Mediterranean diet emphasizes the consumption of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes, but also adds some low-fat dairy, includes white meat, and includes olive oil, 4 tablespoons of olive oil in the Predimed study, and 3 servings of nuts per week. The DASH diet, or the dietary approaches to stop hypertension, is a plant-based diet eating pattern that emphasizes the consumption of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes, but still includes some low-fat dairy and white meat, especially fish, but is much more low-fat compared to the Mediterranean diet. The same for the Nordic diet, which is rich in berries and whole rye bread and leafy green vegetables, but also includes fish and low-fat dairy. And then there's vegetarian diets, excluding all meat, and vegan diets, excluding all animal products. Now, how do you choose between these diets, right? The Mediterranean diet has been shown to improve all the cardiometabolic outcomes. The cardiovascular mortality reduction was reduced by 21% using a Mediterranean diet. Coronary heart disease incidence was reduced by 27%. Coronary heart disease mortality was reduced by 27% on a Mediterranean diet. And also the risk of getting stroke incidence was reduced by 20%, stroke mortality by 13%, and myocardial infarction incidence by 27%. The Mediterranean diet also improves all the cardiometabolic outcomes, such as fasting plasma glucose, systolic and diastolic blood pressure, triglycerides, waist circumference, and body weight. What about the DASH diet? The DASH diet, that's much lower in fat compared to the Mediterranean diet. And aside from emphasizing fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes, it also includes low dairy and some nuts and seeds and lean meats. There have been some studies that have also demonstrated some benefits for the DASH diet. A reduction of cardiovascular disease risk by 20%, a reduction of risk in coronary heart disease by 21%, and the reduction of stroke risk by 19%. And again, a meta-analysis has shown an improvement in cardiometabolic outcomes, such as reduction in blood pressure, blood lipids, improvements in glycemic control, and body weight reduction. The Nordic diet that emphasizes green leafy vegetables, fruits, especially berries, and includes fish and low-fat dairy, has been shown to improve blood pressure and blood lipids. There haven't been as many studies as compared with the other dietary patterns. And we're coming to vegetarian and vegan diets. And a meta-analysis from 7 cohort studies, including almost 200,000 people, has demonstrated a reduction in coronary heart disease mortality by 22% and a reduction in coronary heart disease incidence by 28%. And also improvements in cardiometabolic outcomes, such as blood pressure, and improvements in blood lipids and glycemic control and weight reduction. But now you may be thinking, wow, like all these diets have so many benefits. How do they compare to each other? Well, when you just pull all the meta-analyses together, you may not see many differences. Like for body weight, it seems like all of these diets may have beneficial outcomes. The same for LDL cholesterol and for glycemic control. But that's exactly why we decided to do a head-to-head trial and compare a Mediterranean and a vegan diet head-to-head. We did this in a randomized crossover trial. The participants half the participants started with a Mediterranean diet for 16 weeks, and the other half with a low-fat vegan diet for 16 weeks. And when the 16 weeks were up, then they switched. And the Mediterranean group switched over to a low-fat vegan diet, and the low-fat vegan diet group to the Mediterranean diet. Now, which diet do you think will work better for weight loss and cardiometabolic health? You can put your answers in the chat box. Is it A, the Mediterranean diet, or B, the low-fat vegan diet, or C, both will be about equally beneficial? Who knows? You will need to wait for the answer a bit. Let me start with the experience of our study participant, Kimberly. Kimberly had some extra weight when she joined our study. Her body mass index was 35.9, her total cholesterol 233, and she also had elevated blood sugar. Her blood sugar was 124. Now, on the vegan diet, Kimberly lost 28 pounds. But on the Mediterranean diet, she regained 9 pounds. The same trends for total cholesterol, a reduction by 17 milligrams per deciliter on a vegan diet, but then an increase by 9 milligrams per deciliter on the Mediterranean diet. And the same for fasting blood sugar, a nice reduction on the vegan diet, but an increase on the Mediterranean. What about the whole group? Well, guess what? People were losing 6 kilograms or 13 pounds on the vegan diet compared to the Mediterranean diet. In fact, for the group as a whole, body weight didn't change significantly on the Mediterranean diet, but there was a clear reduction in body weight on the vegan diet. These are all the participants. The green bars are the changes on the vegan diet. We can see that people were losing weight. The vast majority of our study participants were losing weight on the vegan diet. But with the Mediterranean diet, it's kind of all over the place. Some people were gaining weight, some people were losing weight, and the Mediterranean diet was working well for them. But we can see that even for these people, the vegan diet was working better. There were only a couple who were losing weight nicely on the Mediterranean diet compared to the vegan diet. Fat mass was reduced on the vegan diet by 7.7 pounds. So about 2/3 of the weight loss may be explained by the fat loss. And also visceral fat was reduced on the vegan diet. Insulin sensitivity was improved on the vegan diet. LDL cholesterol was reduced, and also systolic blood pressure was reduced on both diets, but more on the Mediterranean one. The same for diastolic blood pressure. So how many, were you keeping track? How many of the cardiometabolic outcomes were improved on the vegan diet, and how many on the Mediterranean diet? Let's start with the Mediterranean diet. How many outcomes were improved on the Mediterranean diet? The answer is only blood pressure, only systolic and diastolic blood pressure, which were improved on both diets, but more on the Mediterranean one. How many outcomes were improved on the vegan diet? All of them. Okay, so which diet worked better for cardiometabolic health? It was the vegan diet. So vegan diet worked well for weight regulation and also for ectopic fat. What is ectopic fat? We were looking at visceral fat around the inner organs, which is the metabolically most dangerous fat. But what about other locations of the ectopic fat? Our adipose tissue has only a certain capacity to store fat. Once we exceed this capacity, the fat starts overflowing to the inner organs, like the liver and the muscle, the pancreas, and it compromises the insulin production. It causes insulin resistance in these tissues. And to give you an analogy, it's like taking a bubble bath. And you're just enjoying the bubble bath. You're enjoying how much water there is in your bathtub until you realize that all the water is overflowing, not only to your bathroom floor, but also to your living room. And in your living room, unfortunately, the furniture is not really built, for so much water. So your furniture may be damaged. All the hardwood floors may suffer from some damage, and the same happens in our organs. This is normal liver. This is fatty liver under the microscope. We can see all the fatty droplets, which cause insulin resistance and also compromise the mitochondrial function. The mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. So if they're not able to function properly, then insulin resistance and diabetes may develop. And hyperglycemia also compromises the ability for beta oxidation of the fatty acids and compromises the function of the mitochondria. The high-fat diet has been shown to really impair the function of mitochondria. The mitochondria are lesser in count, are smaller and dysfunctional in people who are overweight and have diabetes compared to healthy, lean people. Now, I have a question for you. Can a vegan diet reduce liver fat? To answer that question, we performed a 16-week study where we compared a low-fat vegan to a control diet, a standard American diet. And we were sending 44 overweight people to Yale University for the measurements of magnetic resonance spectroscopy of the liver and of the muscle. And now it's time for you to guess, how much did the vegan diet reduce liver fat on average? A, by 14%, B, by 24%, and C, by 34%. You can put your answer in the chat box. What's your guess? 14, 24, or 34%? Ta-da! It was a 34% reduction, which is amazing. There's no causal treatment for fatty liver at this point. So diet is the #1 recommendation for fatty liver. And a vegan diet was able to reduce liver fat by 34% in 16 weeks, which is remarkable. So we know that a vegan diet works for weight regulation and ectopic fat. What about dietary acid load? Dietary acid load, what is it? Well, you may have heard that we're eating fruits and vegetables so that because these are not acidic foods, these are alkaline foods. So is there any truth to it? Can these foods actually improve our metabolic health and our cardiovascular health? It has been shown that the more acids we consume in our diet, the more we are at risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Also, every decrease in dietary acid load by 10 units is associated with an increase by 5% in physical performance. So how can you even calculate the dietary acid load? There's a formula which is based on protein and phosphorus. So the higher your protein and your phosphorus intake, the higher your dietary acid load. But you subtract potassium and magnesium and calcium. So the more potassium and magnesium and calcium you have in your diet, the lower, this will lower your dietary acid load. And what's the dietary acid load in different foods? Let's start with animal foods. Beef, chicken, salami, cheddar cheese. And the highest one is Parmesan, 34.2 milliequivalents per 3 ounces or 100 grams of food. What about plant foods? Much lower. Rye bread, only 4. We were around 8 or 9 being the lowest values. Now we're around 4. Even sugar is completely neutral, more on the negative side, helping our body to get alkaline. Potatoes, alkalinizing effect. And the most alkalinizing food is spinach or green leafy vegetables, -14. The minus sign means that these foods have alkalinizing properties, help us reduce the dietary acid load and get rid of all the extra acids. To give you a comparison, a ham and cheese sandwich would have almost 42 milliequivalents, but the same amount of baked potatoes with spinach would be in the negative, -23 milliequivalents. So the difference would be almost 65 milliequivalents. Going back to the previous study on physical performance, this would boost your physical performance by 30%, only based on the meal you would be eating. And what about dietary acid load and weight loss? We were looking at the power of a low-fat vegan diet versus a controlled diet for 16 weeks in 244 overweight adults to lose weight based on the dietary acid load. And people on the vegan diet were losing about 14 pounds in 16 weeks. And now, how much do you think the dietary acid load decreased on average on the vegan diet? A, by 14 milliequivalents per day, B, by 24 milliequivalents per day, and C, by 34 milliequivalents per day. What do you think? Put your answer in the chat box. The answer is 24 milliequivalents per day. Now, what does it mean? Let's say every 10 units decrease in dietary acid load were also associated with how much weight loss? A, about 0.75 kilograms or 1.7 pounds. B, 7.5 kilograms or 16.5 pounds. And C, 17.5 kilograms or 38.6 pounds. What do you think? Put your answer in the chat box. The answer is every 10 units reduction in dietary acid load were associated with about 0.75 kilograms of weight loss or 1.7 pounds of weight loss. Of course, the vegan diet has other beneficial components that help with weight loss, not only the dietary acid load, but also the plant protein itself, the fiber content, the low saturated fat concentrations, and no cholesterol intake, and so on. And after adjustment for energy intake, the 10 units reduction in dietary acid load were associated with about 1.5 pounds of weight loss. So a vegan diet is just amazing for the reduction in dietary acid load, for boosting your performance and for your cardiometabolic health and weight loss. Now let's look at our metabolism. Is a plant-based diet able to increase our metabolism? Turning up the heat has been suggested as one of the strategies how to combat obesity and diabetes. And it has been shown that when we eat a meal, this is breakfast, lunch, and dinner, our energy expenditure goes up. And that's called the thermic effect of food. You know that when you're cold and you eat something, you warm up because of the thermic effect of food, because there's a certain amount of energy released in the form of heat when you eat a meal. Now, are certain foods more thermogenic than others? And the answer is absolutely. One study compared a processed sandwich with white bread with a whole wheat sandwich. And the whole wheat sandwich had a higher thermic effect of food compared to the white bread sandwich. Dr. Barnard was the first one to show that a vegan diet actually increased the after meal calorie burn by 16%. When people switch over to a plant-based diet, their metabolism is speeded up. And we did a study on a vegan diet for 16 weeks. We compared a low-fat vegan diet with a standard American diet, and we were performing some standard meal tests, and we're measuring people's metabolism. This is a machine that's called an Indirect Calorimetry, and it looks like a spaceship. You come into our lab and we place this clear hood over your head and you just breathe normally. And based on the carbon dioxide output, we're able to calculate how many calories you're burning. This is a sample report. You can see that there are some fluctuations, but we can calculate the average over the 15-minute period, and then you get a report whether how much your resting metabolic rate is, and whether you were burning carbohydrates or more fat. Now, insulin resistance was decreased on the vegan diet. Now, the thermic effect of food didn't change significantly in the control group, but in the vegan group, it increased by 14%. So a vegan diet really worked well for metabolism. When you're burning 14% more calories after each meal, That means that you can potentially eat 14% more calories without gaining weight. Or if you are struggling from being overweight, that means that with the same amount of energy you will be losing weight. So the vegan diet really works well for weight regulation, ectopic fat, dietary acid load, and metabolism. And when we compared the vegan diet to the Mediterranean diet, we showed that the vegan diet worked much better than the Mediterranean diet for cardiometabolic health. So I'd like to encourage all of you to give a vegan diet a try. And thank you so much for your attention. And I'm ready to take your questions.